Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the EFL Betting Show. It's myself, your host, Matt Hill, joined by my regular co-host and the fountain of knowledge that is Gab Sutton. I think I have to coin a different line every week there to introduce. How's your week been?
Other than just trying to impersonate a fountain, it's been pretty good, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on. Really looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Yeah, and we're back to a full EFL complement this week as well. We had a bit of FA Cup action last week, disrupting things, but yeah, I won't say I enjoyed it. Carlisle did get knocked out, but it was a spirited 0-0 against Wigan. Damn the Premier League for getting extra time introduced at the first round stage. Should have had a replay there, but we'll not dwell on that. Now, you had a mixed bag, I think it's fair to say it last week, Gab, but you've had some very good weeks. So I'm going to give you a bit of a pass there, but we want to see you bouncing back to form this week. 6 selections. If you're watching the EFL Betting Show for the first time, Gab tends to pick out a couple of games from the Championship, a couple from League One, and a couple from League Two, and he gives you a best bet in each. There's normally a nice range of prices, and that is no different this week. The biggest one being an 8-1 shot. You'll have to stay tuned for that one, though. That is at the back end of the show. And then we have a Club in Focus feature at the end where we've been having fans on from clubs. We haven't got one this week, but the Club in Focus will be Coventry City, who any EFL fans will know have been the big talking point this week after the departure of Mark Robins. But we'll come on to that a little bit later. However, we do start the selections with Coventry, Gab. So feel free to give us a little bit of Robins-based insight here. They take on Sunderland, I believe, a game that you're going to be at, correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm at that one. Looking forward to it. I'll come on to the Robins news sort of in more detail in the in focus section. But I think what's really interesting to me, I looked this up. I think it was on Wednesday, and the odds haven't changed since the Robins news, which I'm really surprised about. Sunderland were 6-5 with most. Oh, that was the biggest price before the news about Mark Robins, and they're still 6-5 now. And I'm amazed by that. I would have thought that Sunderland would have gone into odds on in light of that news. Because I even think 6-5, Matt. I'll ask you this. You've got the league leaders who have got maximum have only dropped 2 points at home all season by November. Their odds against at home to the team that's 17th in the league. Now, you're a punter, Matt. Would you be pretty happy in normal circumstances to get 6-5 in like that?
Yeah, I think people would give you different answers to that question because I think a lot of people are cautious of the new manager bounce or the post-exit bounce, don't they? And how that's going to impact the team. There seems that the market is expecting an upturn from Coventry here, but I have to agree with you there, Gab. Like this is the home team, league leaders, fantastic on their own patch. And you would think there's a fair amount of disarray around that Coventry squad this week. Someone who's been at the club so long, as I say, we'll come on to this in more detail. But I'd snap your hand off for 6-5. And the way the market's moving, they might get a little bit bigger yet. And I might have to actually put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah, I think 6-5 is huge. I would have expected it to be 4-5. I would have certainly expected Sunderland to be odds on, and I would have probably expected them to be evens in normal circumstances or even odds on. So, yeah, I think I expect the Robins exit to be a negative on Coventry. Yes, people can talk about the new manager bounce, but I don't think that's going to be relevant here. I think whenever there's been an unpopular managerial sacking, Birmingham has had it a couple of times when Gary Rowett's been sacked or when John Eustace has sacked her. I think we've lost the following game both times. I'm sure that's the case for lots of other teams as well when there's been an acrimonious sacking. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't think it's common for teams to do well then in the following game. So yeah, for me, I would very strongly fancy Sunderland. I think the disarray in the Coventry camp is going to work in their favour, and this is a Sunderland side that have been impeccable this season, but certainly at home because they've won all their games other than a 2-2 draw against Leeds, who are one of the top sides in the league as well. So yeah, I'm very in favour of Sunderland for this one, and I think 6-5 would be. I might even make it my nap for this week.
Oh well, we'll see. We'll see. I won't pressure you into that just yet, but yeah, it's an interesting one for sure because I think even if you take out all the noise around Coventry, getting Sunderland at odds against at home against virtually anyone in this league, it looks attractive. But then you add in the surrounding noise, and unless you think that is going to be severely detrimental to Sunderland, I think you have to be looking at that as a bet there. So strong opinion to start the show. We carry on into the Championship with Portsmouth versus Preston, which is our next clash. And I think Preston will be fairly happy with the way things have improved under Paul Heckingbottom, but they make a long journey south to Portsmouth. Portsmouth have been on the wrong end of a few fine margins recently, Gab. How do you read this one?
Yeah, I think Portsmouth played really well at Home Park in midweek, and just happened to be on the wrong side of the result. And I think Portsmouth will feel that happened one too many times. I think they've only beaten QPR so far this season, so a little bit foolhardy of me to back them to get all 3 points. But I still think that their performance levels in recent games, or even so far this season, um, other than the 6-1 loss at Stoke, I think they've been competitive in all their games, and I think they're really unlucky to only have one win on the cards. So for me, I'm backing Portsmouth to beat a Preston North End side that I think will stay up under Paul Heckingbottom, and they'll feel like they can steadily climb the table. Competitive performance from them against Sunderland at home in midweek, but I've got a feeling that there's going to be a change of luck for Portsmouth this weekend.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to ask you that actually, Gab. This selection is based more on Portsmouth than it is Preston. I'm guessing. Like you're feeling like Portsmouth are due that sort of result that they've not quite had in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've been quite unlucky with injuries so far this season, and they've certainly missed the likes of Colby Bishop and Connor Shaughnessy. So if they'd had those two players fit, could that have made a difference? I think the answer to that is possibly. But then I also think that they've had players that have been able to stand out so far this season, like Callum Lang, for instance, has been outstanding, I feel, and has been a real sort of driving force for them. So for me, I still think that the Portsmouth, with Murphy on the left, of course, as well, Owen Moxon in midfield, I think Portsmouth might be able to get a win here. So I'm going to back them at 19-10.
Yeah, and I must say the price does help, doesn't it, as well? It's a big price for a home side against an opposition, probably not the most fearsome opposition in the Championship, I think it's fair to say. Okay, so we dip into League One then. Leyton Orient at home to Blackpool, and we talk about teams that have maybe not had results that represent their performances. I think Leyton Orient over the course of this season have been better than what the table suggests. And Richie Wellens is a manager I have an awful lot of time for. I often thought when he was down in League Two with Orient, he was probably the best tactical manager in the division. Blackpool, on the other hand, I know we had a discussion about Steve Bruce's appointment, concerns over that. I know that you sort of stuck your neck out there, Gab, and thought you didn't think this was a great appointment. He inevitably, once you say something like that, goes on and gets a perfect start to his tenure. But obviously, there's been some unfortunate news off the field as well, which has led to Bruce having some time away and what have you as well. But just generally, it feels like that good start has maybe worn off a little bit now, and Leyton Orient on their home turf, normally quite solid operators, aren't they?
Yeah, so this is more Blackpool obviously are winless in 5 in the league, so that sort of feeds towards my selection here in terms of the fact that the only way that we're out of pocket with this bet is if Leyton Orient lose, and it's a 9 to 10 shot. But for me, Leyton Orient, they're definitely, like you mentioned, Matt, they're a team where their results haven't quite matched up with their performances, so they're currently 20th in the table, but I think that it wouldn't surprise me at all if they found top half form between now and the end of the season, because they've been outplayed at Shrewsbury and they've been outplayed at the leaders Wickham. But I would say that in 11 of the other 13 games they've had in 11 of their 13 league games so far this season, I would argue that they've actually shaded the territory, and they're a little bit shot shy, so they haven't quite been able to convert that into clear-cut chances or really be able to test the opposition goalkeeper. But I still feel that if you're consistently able to shade the territory of games, or better in some cases, it shows that you are able to impose yourselves on games and you're not too far away. And I think that if Leyton Orient can find that last bit, then I think that they're going to start to look like a top half side. They've got some players that I really like. Jack Curry at left back, Ethan Galbraith I think is a really dynamic midfielder. So yeah, I'm happy to back Leyton Orient to get a result here, and I think to get a shade short of evens with this price, with a draw no bet option at 9 to 10, I think that's a decent selection, or 10 to 11 with Betfair.
Yeah, 10 to 11, even a little bit bigger. I do like that one, I must say, and I think we will see Orient climbing up the table in the weeks ahead. I just want to touch on Wellens before we move on, Gab. As I say, I'm a big fan of his. He can be quite volatile in his post-match interviews, I suppose. Sometimes he
Yeah.
doesn't hide away from saying what he thinks.
No.
He's criticised his own goalkeeper at times this season. He's called his players shambolic at times this season. But all the underlying numbers, as you say, are still really good. Just how highly do you rate Richie Wellens as a tactician? And is he somebody that you think could see going on and operating maybe at championship level in the future?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I think that I think he is so outspoken, and I think he shares a lot of his ideas. I do think that he has got some good technical ideas, which you have to have the kind of success that he's had in his career. When you think that he's won the League Two title with Swindon and Leyton Orient, got Orient to a top half finish last season as well. I think that's I think that show you've got to have something about you, in the technical and tactical side. I think that he's a manager who's got some modern ideas, but also knows how to be pragmatic and mix things up from time to time as well. So I think he's got a nice blend of the two. I think I do wonder whether his way of working with people possibly suits League One and League Two, and whether being as direct and upfront with people would quite work, in the Premier League. I'm not sure, because a lot of managers in the Premier League aren't as outspoken as Richie Wellens is, and I don't think he's the kind of manager who'll sort of censor himself, and nor should he. But I think he's a manager that's going to be one of the better ones in League One, and I'm a huge fan of what he's done at Leyton Orient.
Yeah, I think he certainly ruffled a few feathers at Salford, didn't he, in his time there, brief time there, and that
I'm sure he's learned a
maybe his
lot from that
undoing.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe his undoing, as you say, as you go up the pyramid, and you kind of the profile of manager they look for is probably slightly different to what he is, but a very capable operator at this level for sure. Peterborough versus Cambridge, then this is always a fiercely contested affair. And Gab, I know that you've been on both sides of Peterborough in the last few weeks, and they are that kind of side, aren't they? A little bit of an inconsistent operation there. We always associate goals with Peterborough. I think whatever season it is, they always seem to produce. Cambridge finding themselves in a bit of a scrap, as many would expect in League One. But how do you see this one going? Because I thought this was a tough one to read.
Yeah, I have a Peterborough fan on my podcast once a month or so, called Tim Stoodley from the Yellow Block podcast, and he's not a huge fan of Ricky J Jones, because he thinks that he can be a little bit wasteful. So whenever Ricky J Jones scores, we often have a bit of fun, a bit of banter on the podcast, because I actually really like Ricky J Jones, and I like his running power. I like his pace. If I was a centre half, I'd be scared of facing him. And he's already got 4 goals in the league. I think he was up and running in the FA Cup last weekend as well. I've got a feeling that he is going to get among the goals here against the Cambridge side that maybe don't have an awful lot of pace in their back line, with people like sort of Michael Morrison at the back, for instance, who's in his mid-30s now. So I think Ricky J Jones, there's a chance that he could have a bit of joy. Peterborough do have a good sort of home record against Cambridge in recent derby matches, and I think they're a team that, because they're such a young side, I don't know whether they'll find consistency this season to really challenge for promotion, because some of those key departures from the summer might hit them hard. But I do think they're the kind of team that might be able to enjoy a cricket score now and again, because Darren Ferguson's sides, like you say, you always associate them with goals, and you always associate them with strikers. And I've got a feeling that this could be the season where Ferguson works his magic with Ricky J Jones, and he becomes that centre forward for the posh that bangs the goals in. So yeah, Ricky J Jones for me. And I was actually really surprised, given the form that Jones is in, for him to score and for Peterborough to win at 11-4. That for me, that's a huge price. That is just short of 3-1. Considering that Ricky J Jones already has four goals for the season, and I think most of them have come quite recently, because I think he was goalless for a few games to start the season. And Peterborough can be very clinical at home as well. I like that 11-4. I think that's a good price. I don't know what you think about that one, Matt. Does that caught you all right?
Do like it. All I would ask is, I suppose Cambridge, obviously, they come into this game off the back of 3 straight wins, which has only taken the tally to 10 points, which tells you all you need to know about their start to the season. I'm guessing you're feeling that those 3 wins have been built on the foundations of 3 clean sheets, but you do feel like Peterborough have the ammunition to sort of end that run. I'm guessing by the way you're talking. Is it just the fact that Cambridge, as good, as solid as they've been in recent weeks, they are still a bottom end League One side against the second most prolific attack in the division here?
Yeah, I still think there's a bit of a gap between these two teams.
Fair enough.
Cambridge might yet stay up. Peterborough might miss out on the playoffs, but I still think there's a bit of a gap between the sides. And the other thing I would say is Cambridge have been able to contain sides recently, which is why they've got those 3 straight wins to nil. But if you look at the opponents that they faced a Burton Albion side that's actually winless in the league this season. They faced a Stevenage side that have scored 10 goals in 14, and they faced a Wigan Athletic side
Wigan.
that faced 12. They've scored 12 goals in 13,
True.
although they did manage to get a couple of goals at Carlisle in the FA Cup last weekend.
Yeah, we won't dwell on that. Yeah. I'd be worried if they did it, to be honest. The fact that they went 90 minutes without scoring was more worrying for them, I think.
So I think Cambridge, they've not faced particularly clinical attacking sides. And so I think Peterborough United, the fact they've scored 25 goals so far this season, they're the second top goal scorers in the division behind Wycombe Wanderers. For me, I'm happy to back them to penetrate this Cambridge defence in a way that Burton, Wigan and Stevenage haven't been able to.
All right, I came in sceptical. You've won me round, so well done there. I'll give you that one. So Ricky J Jones to score anytime and Peterborough to win 11-4 with Sky Bet. A nice little way of boosting that win price about the home side. We go into League Two then. First game for Gab this week is Tranmere versus Newport. Gab, two sides that I think at the start of the season, Newport maybe would have been in that relegation conversation for quite a few League Two observers, whereas Tranmere, I think, more saw them kind of treading water in mid-table under Nigel Adkins. The season is still early, and it's quite difficult to get a grasp of where these two might finish up because we've seen hot and cold from both of them. But I can see you're leaning towards the away side getting a result here. Can you give us a little bit more insight on it?
It's a bit of a price-based selection, this one, Matt. Newport County, if we're looking at the pure maths of it, Newport County have won 6 of their 14 league games so far this season, and Tranmere Rovers have only won 3 of their 13, and they've lost 5 and 13. So for me, I think on that basis, it feels like the fact that it's 4-1 for Newport feels like a massive price, when maybe 2 or 3-1 would be the fairer sort of price, and it still feels. I don't know if you find this as a betting man, Matt. The smaller clubs can get a bit underrated in the market because the traders maybe perceive the bigger clubs as eventually the bigger clubs will kind of show their superiority. They're just in a low spot right now, but I'm not sure that that's the case with Tranmere Rovers because where you are in November, that's a pretty good. I think once you get to 13, 14 games in, you've got a pretty good barometer of where teams are at. And Tranmere Rovers, they're the lowest scorers in the division with 8 goals in 13. They've got massive problems up top, where I don't think the strikers they've got are good enough. They're missing Rob Apter, and the only player who could come close to doing what Rob Apter did for Tranmere last season is Josh Hawkes, who's somebody that the manager Nigel Adkins doesn't want, or doesn't seem to want. And so it feels like you've got this Tranmere Rovers side that are really short of inspiration. And I'm almost wondering if it's possibly more favourable for Newport County to face Tranmere Rovers at Prenton Park, where you've got the disillusioned home fans that might sort of have a bit of a grumble perhaps and could create a bit of a restless atmosphere, as opposed to the Super White Army that might go to Rodney Parade and would be more let's get behind the team because we made all this trip. So there's a different, I don't know if your experience as a fan, Matt, away fans tend to be more vocal, if you like, whereas home fans can create more
100%. Yeah, I would go with that. I feel like the same way with my side as well. When we're struggling, sometimes it's nice to be away from home because especially when there's a team where I think there's a level of expectation. Maybe you're playing in a lower division than the fans feel they should be in, or you're on a bad run of form, or the season's just not going how you wanted it to. And it's very, very easy for the home crowd to turn in those kind of situations. And this does feel like the kind of game where if Tranmere fall behind, those frustrations will come out from the crowd again, maybe play into Newport's hands. And yes, just to touch on what you said earlier about teams being maybe, the price being factored into, an inevitable feeling that they will improve at some point or that they will take advantage of these fixtures. I think we see it on a weekly basis, actually. Normally you get some late money into the market from some shrewder shrewder people who sort of identify these things. And this may be one where we see it, but I can see you wanting to go with the double chance cab, which is still odds against.
Yeah, Newport were 4-1, but I wanted to give myself some insurance. But I think to get odds against on an odds against quote, when you think about it, Tranmere Rovers have won 3 of their 13 league games, or they
It's
failed
gone
to
out of
win
the
in
cup
10 of their 13.
to Oldham as well, haven't they, last week at
Exactly,
home?
National League Oldham. I think it's a club that there's very little enthusiasm from what I can see with Tranmere Rovers fans about what's going on the pitch right now. Almost all the focus is really when's the takeover happening, how are things moving, who's going to take over the club and give it that lift that it needs. Because at the moment, they're not really seeing much to kind of get behind on the pitch. And as things stand, what are we, 2:00 on Friday afternoon? Takeover hasn't happened yet. So I'm not sure where that sort of burst of inspiration and energy is going to come from for Tranmere Rovers. And also to focus on the Newport aspect, I've really been impressed with the style of play that Nelson Jardim has been able to implement. He came in late in the summer. That was a difficult job for him. Already you've been able to see the style of play that he wants. And so I think you've got to give him a lot of credit for that. And 6 wins in 14 already. I think whether you want to go for the bigger price and go back to 4-1 for Newport, I wouldn't put you off that. But for a safer selection, I'm not sure I see Newport County losing tomorrow afternoon. So to get 23-20 with a double chance, I think that's a really good bet.
Yeah, I like that one. I really do. And Tranmere feels like a club similar to mine, maybe just sort of a little bit of disillusionment with what's on the pitch at the moment, even if there is some excitement about what could happen off it down the line. Now, Doncaster and Notts County is quite in contrast to the Tranmere Newport game, a game with two teams who do have lofty ambitions this season. I think it's fair to say these are two of a handful of sides who will have genuine title ambitions still this
Two
season.
of the best teams in the league for me, Matt.
Oh, I'd agree with that of what I've seen of them, and I will be seeing Carlisle play Doncaster in the flesh later this month. Not looking forward to that, let me tell you. But yeah, this is a game that could have ramifications in that title race, even though we're very early in the season. You don't know, and I wouldn't expect these two to be finishing too far apart from each other come the end of the campaign. Now, Gab, Doncaster obviously come into this as favourites due to their home advantage, but I don't think there's a lot between these two sides. I could see your best bet on the screen, other people can't. So let's carry on the suspense a little bit more and just tell me how you're seeing this clash.
Yeah, it's a price-based one. I don't see a huge difference between Doncaster Rovers and Notts County, which is why I was surprised to see that Doncaster Rovers were odds on for this game. I don't think that. Would you agree with me on this, Matt? I don't think home advantage alone should be enough for a game between two even teams for the home side to be odds on. I think, and there's nothing really to suggest in terms of the underlying numbers that Doncaster are a lot better than Notts County. So for Doncaster to be 2 odds on, I think I would probably question. So I think the value is probably siding with Notts County in some form. Now you can obviously go to the double chance option. I certainly wouldn't put our viewers off going down that route. But I've gone with I might as well go for the big reveal now. I've gone with the 8-1 win to nil for Notts County. A bit of a chunky price, so this is one who likes to live a bit on the edge. I think Notts County have been very strong defensively. I think they've won 4 games to nil so far this season. They've kept a lot of clean sheets as well. Much better defensively for 5 different reasons, right? Because they had the worst defensive record in League Two.
Wow.
Yeah, so which is why there was definitely a massive concerted effort to can we keep our style of play but be better defensively, and there's 5 reasons why they've been able to do that. They've got a better goalkeeper now in Alex Bass. They've got better individual defenders in Jacob Adoha, I love, and Matty Platt as well. They've got more depth in midfield. So last season they were snookered when Matty Palmer got injured in November time, and this season they don't have that because they've got more options. I think they're stronger in the press this season, and I think they've got better balance between attacking and defensive duties with their wing backs. So you put all those 5 things together. Any one of them might only be a subtle difference, but as a combined, it's kind of had a cumulative effect, and they've gone from being one of the most defensively vulnerable sides in the league, which really undermined the attacking brilliance of Jody Jones and Macaulay Langstaff last season, to much more of a complete side, despite losing Macaulay Langstaff to Millwall in the summer. Alassane Jatta has obviously stepped up really well. So for me, for Notts County, for a sort of clean sheet machine that's kept, I think it might be 6 clean sheets in the league and 4 wins to nil. For them to be 8-1 to win to nil this weekend at Doncaster, who, yes, they've got a good home record, but they've also lost 1-0 at home to Bromley this season. They've been beaten 3-0 at home to Chesterfield.
I was going to say that, Gab, actually, when you said about, you asked me what I thought about teams at home in a close game. Does it make that much of a difference? The only time it would worry me is when the home team has a really sort of scary home record, like a real fortress. And like you said, Doncaster have been beaten 3-0 at home to Chesterfield, 1-0 at home to Bromley last time out. Either of those scorelines would do you nicely for your 8-1 selection. So, no, I would not be frightened of taking on Doncaster at home, particularly with the Notts County side, who have been so impressive this season from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doncaster also drew at home to Crewe as well. So,
Yeah.
they've got a good home record, but it's not like it's flawless by any means. So, yeah, I'm liking Notts County this season, and I think the 8-1 gives us some real value there.
Good stuff. Always nice to finish on a bit of a bombshell, isn't it? 8-1 chance to round things off. I will sum up Gab's best bets before we end the show. But now it is time for our new Club in Focus section. I'm not really going to call it new anymore because this is the 4th week we've done this. And yeah, we're back into the Championship this week. Where else could we go, really? They have been the story of this season. It is Coventry City. Gab, Mark Robins, one of the longest serving managers in recent memory across all of the divisions. Always sad when somebody loses their job who has such a strong affinity to a club. And I think it always shocks outsiders, particularly, doesn't it? Because those who maybe aren't following Coventry City with a fine-tooth comb would just think it's a slow start. He'll turn it round. He's got the track record proven. Now, I've seen a mix of reaction from Coventry fans. I think we both agreed that more are unhappy with this than they are happy with this. But I don't think there was quite the element of surprise that there was from outsiders, perhaps. They said that the owner, I saw a couple of fans commenting that the owner had a decision to make, I suppose, after the continued poor results. Gab, it's easy for us to throw stones without being in the centre of it. But do you think this looks like a short-term decision from the Coventry board?
I actually think it's the opposite. I don't actually think I think the results are the I don't think the results are the motivation for the decision. They might be one of the might have given Doug King some encouragement to feel like he could make the decision while Coventry are towards the bottom of the table rather than when they're banging form. But I think it's possibly a decision that's motivated more by how Doug King wants to move forward structurally, because the way Mark Robins has worked over the last 7 years, he's been very much the big picture man, the man that's kind of overseen everything, and it was his kind of right-hand man, Adi Varviash and Dennis Lawrence, who were kind of doing a lot of the coaching on the grass. And the way that Mark Robins had a lot of operational autonomy at Coventry City, and I guess the way that Doug King wants to move forward, he wants to go with a sporting director and head coach model, where the sporting director has all the operational footballing autonomy, and the head coach sort of coaches the players and picks the team. And that it hasn't been how Mark Robins has worked. So it's understandable that Doug King's come into Coventry City with a way that he wants to work. It's understandable that Mark Robins wouldn't want to work that way. And so from that point of view alone, a change does make some kind of sense. But I would kind of question whether Doug King has done the right thing, having this kind of one-size-fits-all sort of blanket approach where this is how I want to go, and I'm not going to adapt to the circumstances that exist right now, whereby we've got a manager who has delivered brilliant results consistently for 7 years. Do we want to waste that? Do we want rather, should I be adapting my way of working to suit Mark Robins? And I think that possibly would have been the better way of going about it, because I think when you sack such a popular person that's got the support of the whole fan base, that the whole away end was singing Mark Robins's name when they won 3-0 at Middlesbrough. Actually, maybe when you've got a manager that's got that connection with fans, that's delivering results season on season, maybe it would have been the thing to stick with them and trust them to see out the project, and that there would have had to have been some sort of compromise from both sides. But I think they could have made it work. But I think what I was kind of most upset by really is the rumours, whether they're accurate or not, that Mark Robins was told it over the phone rather than in person, which is almost worse than the decision itself. So if that's true, so I don't think Doug King has handled it well. I think it's understandable that he would have wanted to work in a different way, but maybe should have seen what was working in front of him.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the players that they've lost in the last couple of seasons as well. We've seen what Victor Gyökeres has gone on to do with Sporting Lisbon, scoring a hat-trick against Manchester City in midweek. Absolutely prolific in the Portuguese top tier. This summer, losing Callum O'Hare to Sheffield United, always an influential player when fit for them. Casey Palmer departing on deadline day as well to Hull. So there's been some
and
really...
Gus Harmer the year before to Sheffield United as well, of course.
So there's been some really, really big figures lost there. And I suppose even when I look at the players that have come in, Haji Wright, obviously a very capable player, Ellis Sims, but have they replaced with the requisite quality that they've lost? I know it's difficult to do because these are great players that are going out, but from Mark Robins' perspective, you could potentially argue that, look, I'm losing my best players every summer. I'm getting reinforcements, but are they at that top level to keep going forward?
It's a great question. I don't think the Coventry City's best players now are as good as Victor Gyökeres and Gus Hamer of 2 seasons ago, the year they reached the playoff final. However, I think they've got a better all-round squad, especially in terms of potential and especially in terms of permanent assets. So 2 seasons ago, they had those 2 or 3 star players mixed in with 5 or 6 loanees, I think they had in the playoff final season, and the rest of them were kind of stalwarts, had kind of been with the club and that kind of experienced core, if you like. But you wouldn't say, in terms of the saleable assets, it was those 2 or 3. It was Gus Harmer, Victor Gyökeres, and then if Callum O'Hare was fit. So now I think they've got possibly more players who have got that saleable sort of value, if you like. However, I think the problem that they're having is that blend between youth and experience has been a bit off kilter, where they've gone so far in favour of potential and maximising saleable assets that they've maybe lost a little bit of sight of what's going to make us effective in the here and now. So I think probably what was needed was maybe rejig it a little bit for Mark Robins, maybe bring in a couple of experienced heads in January, maybe bring in another couple of coaches that are a bit more sort of high pedigree as opposed to coaches that have just been promoted from the academy, because that's a very different working dynamic for Mark Robins to what he had with 85 Ash and Lawrence. I'm not sure that the right solutions that have been found, but I do think that whoever comes in does have an exciting squad to work with a couple of tweaks.
Wanted to ask you about the departure of 85 Ash in particular as well, actually, because when such a pivotal figure behind the scenes leaves a club, and for quite mysterious reasons, it can rock the foundations. And I think he was a very close ally of Robins, wasn't he, as well? So how much of a factor do you think those departures that you mentioned had on this difficult start? Because we've seen it so many times with clubs. Brian Clough probably being the most famous example. The man at front and centre of the camera often has a very important figures in his back room that kind of keep him doing what he does so well. And he lost a couple of big ones, didn't he, at a similar time?
Yeah, I think that can be a really important thing. I don't know whether that was Vaviash's personal choice or whether that was enforced by Doug King, or was it one of the things that could cause one of those differences of opinions, maybe. I don't know. Hard to say, I suppose, isn't it, from the outside? But I definitely think that those, when you consider how important the coaches are to Mark Robins' way of working, I can certainly see how losing people of that kind of influence would have a knock-on effect.
Just moving it back to Coventry then, Gab, as we try to sort of conclude on this then. So we've already touched on this earlier in the show. They face Sunderland this weekend. We both kind of agree that looks a very tough game for them, particularly given the upheaval that's gone on this week.
Yeah.
What kind of how do they look to replace Mark Robins? What kind of manager are you expecting to see come into the club?
Well, I'm expecting them to bring in a sporting director who will have a lot of autonomy in terms of the operational structure of the club, and I'm also expecting them to bring in a head coach and somebody that's possibly worked in elite football and somebody that knows how to develop players, because it does seem like the model is going to be based on how can we develop these big assets that we've got and sell another Gus Hamer or sell another Gyökeres. So I think that'll be the target for Coventry City. But I think it's just kind of going to be, how do you lift the feeling around the club? And I think it's going to take a while for Coventry City fans to kind of process what's happened for Mark Robins, and that's really the cost of the decision that's been made. And is the cost going to be worth it? I'm not so sure.
Well, look, we try to, just to finish off, try to place Coventry in the remainder of this season. So many untangibles at the moment, with not knowing who's going to come in and how that future is going to look in the immediate term. But Gab, just to give you a feel for it, they're 25-1 to be relegated. They're 4-5 to finish in the top half. Where do you think would constitute a good finish for this Coventry squad at the moment? Because there are some undoubted quality in there, and then it feels like they should be finishing higher than where they currently are.
Yeah, I think the rest of this season is going to be difficult. I think that I actually think that this season is going to be more. The rest of the season is going to be less about the actual results on paper, because I can't see them getting into the top six now. I think it's more going to be about, can Doug King win over some trust? Can we see a bit of vulnerability from Doug King? Can some bridges be built? Can the new head coach? I think the new head coach is going to have to be very conscious about how the position that they're coming into, the throne that they're stepping up to, if you like, and the sort of stepfather figure that they're going to be kind of risk becoming a little bit in terms of taking the job. I think they're going to need to show a bit of vulnerability, and I think with some transparency and communication and with time, I think they can sort of mend a few of those wounds. But I think it's going to be difficult, because I think Coventry City fans are very upset about losing a club legend in those circumstances, and that's never going to be easy.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation indeed, and a great club, Coventry. I'm sure we saw how vastly their support ranges in the FA Cup run and in the Championship playoff final a couple of years ago. So a massive club. I hope to see them continue on that steady upward trajectory rather than slipping back down the leagues. They certainly belong in the upper echelons of the English game for my money. Really enjoyed that chat, Gab. Let's just finish the show this week by re-rounding up your best bets. So in the Championship, we're going for Sunderland to get the better of managerless Coventry at 6-5, and we're going for Portsmouth to get a home win, a crucial home win over Preston North End. Down into League One, we have Leyton Orient draw no bet against Blackpool, who have been struggling a little bit of late. Gab's favourite bet of the week, maybe it's Naplesy, is Ricky J. Jones to Scotland Peterborough to win at 11-4 against near neighbours Cambridge. And then in League Two, we have Newport double chance away at Tranmere, who just seems to be limping along, not doing an awful lot. And then the big outsider of the week, Notts County to win 2-0 against Doncaster in a top of the table clash. Gab, what would be your best bet there out of those six, please?
Do you know what, Matt? I don't know if you agree with this, but I'm actually quite happy with the selections that I've been able to find for this weekend's games.
So you're feeling bullish this week?
Yeah? I am feeling a little bit bullish, Matt. Yeah, I think I would make Sunderland 6-5 my nap for this weekend, but there's a few that I'm pretty keen on. Which is your favourite? I'd love to know your selection.
Good question. Well, you really won me round on the Peterborough Cambridge one. I wasn't so sure about that, but now you've got me thinking that is a nice bet. I would probably go Leyton Orient draw no bet. I'm a sucker for a bit of a safer bet, and I do think Orient's results just haven't matched up. And I think you touched on it earlier about the market doesn't always catch up with things at the lower level quite quickly as it does at the Premier League. And I think that's one of them. I think Leyton Orient are better than the bare form suggests. And I think having the draw no bet as well is really solid against a Blackpool side who are perhaps in that post-honeymoon period now with Steve Bruce at the helm. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that. Look forward to seeing how you get on this week, Gab. Well, I hope you enjoyed the EFL Betting Show. If you want to come on and talk about your club in a future week, do let us know in the comments or on social media. We'd love to have you involved and chat about your team at length with Gab and pick his brains as well on how your team might fare. Let us know your best bet as well in the comments if you have any. And thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.